Hey guys, it's Daniel and welcome back to my shop. Today we're on phase 2 of the 3.5 Ecoboost build for the 2011 through 2012 Ford F-150 truck. Now today we're going to focus on 3 more items. These items are pretty much going to take up the entire video. It's probably going to be about an hour or so long. And like I said in the first video, at the end, we're going to go ahead and break this up to multiple sections instead of one long video, so you can go to that one section and focus on what you're trying to do. Now, like I said, we're gonna focus on these 3 items: the rods and pistons, mains, and then the oil pump. Now I've already got the piston rings and the pistons. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to install them one at a time in the block. Once we get them all installed, then we're going to flip it over and then we're going to do our torquing. But before we do our torquing, we're going to utilize the rod bolt stretch method. That means we're going to check the bolt to make sure it has the right strength on it when we torque it, and it doesn't stretch the bolt too far or not enough. So after we get the pistons in, everything, and all the whole procedure for it, we're going to go down to the mains and we're going to install the 3rd set of main bolts along with our girdle that fits on the bottom of the engine. Then we're going to torque it off. Lastly, we're going to go in, we're going to try to install the oil pump just to knock out one other item. Now over here on the table, I've got a few items I'm going to show you that we're going to use to go ahead and make this video. Of course, we've got our Manley rods, our Manley pistons with the Manley rings on it. But you see here, I've got a bucket of type F transmission fluid. Here on the other side of the table, I have our SAE 30 break-in oil. Just need to have just a little oil in the bucket, enough to submerge the rod bolts in before we do our torquing. Of course, back here is our pickup tube, and you probably can't see it, but here's our girdle. It was on the table last time we were working. Of course, I've got the oil pump that we're going to install. It's on the table as well from last video. And of course, I've got the assorted engine break-in oil, and I've got the other items that we may or may not need while we're going through. Also, we have our set of King rod bearings. We're going to make sure we install those correctly with our lube. We're also, in just a second, I'm going to go ahead and lube the piston pins in the pistons. Make sure they have plenty before we even start this. So here we go. So first off, unless you plan on keeping the box, which I don't, we're going to go ahead and lube our wrist pins while they're in the box. It just makes it just a little bit easier. You have something, to hold the pistons. You don't have to put them on the table or worry about them falling in the floor. We just want to get enough lube in here, rotate it back and forth. Make sure they're well lubricated. Just like so. We're going to go through and do all the rest of them. And just work it back and forth. Slide the rod to the other side of the wrist pin. Get some on it. Just work it back and forth, work that lube in it. Yes, you can do this while you're installing the pistons on the rods, but there you have a mess you're gonna have to contend with while you're moving the rods around. Let's say, like I had to break the rod bolts loose. They're torqued to 90 foot-pounds from the factory. And while you're trying to get all that done, all this stuff will run everywhere. So that's why I do it like this. So I've got the shop warmed up pretty good. It's 22 degrees outside right now. don't know if you can tell, but the ooey gooey is not so gooey right now since it's warm in here. That's a good thing. Okay, we've got them lubed up. Next, we're gonna take our number 1 rod and piston, which I've marked on here on the piston. I also put it in the box according to where it goes on the block. I'm gonna take our rod bolts out, and we're gonna put them over here in the oil per the instructions from the manufacturer. Then we're gonna take the cap off. Now note, I've marked on the cap with permanent marker which way the cap goes on. Trying to get it off, it's just a little bit harder to get off than normal. It is a very, very tight machine fit. And we're going to clean off our bearing surfaces. Same for here. Don't want any hair, don't want any foreign material on our bearing surfaces. And go ahead and install our bearing. In the rod, or in the rod cap. Make sure it presses down all the way. Make sure it sets pretty even down in the cap. There we go. Wipe off the surface. Same thing with our rod. And also in the previous video, I explained why I do not put any lube or anything where the bearing, under where the bearings fit. It seems to me for a good reason. Now, before we do anything else, make sure our rings are in the proper position. First ring, gap goes forward. Second ring, gap goes back, and you have the 2 oil rings. Just got turned just a little bit. Be real careful. It's easy to turn it and get it out of whack. Especially if you have big meat fingers like I got. Okay, so our gaps are correct. Cap is correct. Then what I do is I just take the top of the piston and dip it off in the transmission fluid. Just like so. We want to make sure it gets plenty of transmission fluid in and under the rings. Just like so. Now I'm also going to take a new clean shop rag. I'm going to dip it just a little bit off in the transmission fluid to get it wet, and then we're going to wipe our cylinders down. We'll just do the first 3 for right now with clean, fresh transmission fluid. This will also give us a little bit of lubrication, so it's not completely dry, but will not give us problems with seating the rings once we get the engine together. Once we got that, just do a clean up here, the top. Now we're going to take the first rod and piston assembly First I'm going to take this assembly lube, make sure I get an even coat on the rod journal. Go ahead and lubricate. The bearing, just like so. Now we're going to take our installation tool. This is new to me. I've been using the one that you slowly crank it down and it gets smaller and smaller. I just got tired of fighting with it on previous builds, so I had to go ahead and try this out. You have to kind of pre-install it on the piston. The rings depressed. Get the tool over the rings, like so. Now, once you get it over the rings, you can see it kind of presses the rings down for you. Go ahead and put it on now. Note, the piston has a arrow facing forward, means the front. I've got it marked number 1. So we are going to line it up with the main, or with the rod journal. And we're just going to start running it down in there. Push it with our fingers. We'll have to reach up in here and we're going to have to line the rod up. Let's see. Turn the piston a little bit and just tap it in. Anything stops, you stop. And we get the piston in there. Check our work. It is made contact with the rod journal. So I'm going to rotate the engine while pushing down on the piston. It exposes that. When the piston's all the way down, the rod's still making contact with the rod journal. I'm going to take the main cap, verify that our marks match up before I install it. Just push it together. Next, I'm going to take our rod bolts that have been soaking in the oil. I'm going to go ahead and install the rod bolts to hold everything together. Like I said, at this point, we're not going to do any torquing. Just running the bolts up. So I'm going to take a speed wrench, an 11mm, and slowly run the bolt up until it's seated. Same thing for the other one, just back and forth. So the main cap halves closed. And that should be it. Now the piston's in. Let's go ahead and rotate over and take a look at what we have. And there it is. So now what we can do, rotate it just where we have plenty of room here. we're going to check it. We're going to check the initial length of each rod bolt before we do any torquing. These Manley rods come with the ARP 2000 series bolts. This particular ones do. Or you can get the ARP rod bolts made out of the 8740 material. Now the part number for these bolts is 42390, and that's really important when you get to how much it's supposed to be torqued, your bolt stretch, tolerances. Now on our particular bolt, it takes 90 foot-pounds of torque, initial torque, and you want the bolt stretch to be 5 to 6 thousandths of an inch. As long as we get 5 to 6 thousandths of an inch, we're good. Okay, so now I've got our bolt stretch gauge. Go ahead and put it in. I've got the spring tension set. But once it goes in, it'll hold pretty tight. And this particular bolt is 0. Needle set with 0. All you do, if you need to re-zero it, loosen it off, turn the dial, tighten it back up, and it zeroes it out. Let's check the other bolt. Both bolts are backed off, they're loose. This one shows a difference of 1 thousandths. Is 1 thousandths shorter than the other bolt. So what we're going to do is we're going to tighten both our rod bolts to our specification, which is 90 foot-pounds, and then we're going to check stretch again. We're going to check the measurement, which will tell us what the stretch is. So, got my trusty clicker torque wrench. It is a longer torque wrench. Clicker one, when it clicks, it means it's right at 90 pounds, 90 foot-pounds. So run them down where they're right there where they need to be. All right, and then we're going to start torquing. You want to move in one motion. You don't want to keep stopping and starting. So that's 90. That's 90. Okay. Get our gauge. We're going to go back and we're going to check stretch. So we put it on there. And our tolerance is what? 5 to 6 thousandths? We are within that. We're just under 6 thousandths. Perfect. Let's check the other one. This one is right at 5 thousandths. So we subtract 1. We need to go just a tad bit tighter, because it's sitting at 4 thousandths right now, stretch. So we can go 2 foot-pounds. Check it again. Got at 5 still. So we're going to go up to 95 foot-pounds. The maximum we're supposed to go is going to be 100. Check it again. The problem we have here when we're having to go back and forth is your breakaway torque just over 5 thousandths. Your breakaway torque is more than your actual torque when you actually are turning the bolt. So we're going to go ahead and bump this up to 98 foot-pounds. Check it, and we are just short of our requirement, so we're going to go to 100. And we are dead on 5 thousandths bolt stretch. So that is how you use the bolt stretch method. Although everything is manufactured the same with the same tolerances, you're gonna have some bolts just a little longer, a little shorter. Some bolts that, of course, gonna take a little bit more torque than the others to get to where you want on the strength of the bolt. And the strength of the bolt is the holding pressure. We want the same amount of holding pressure on both sides. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of these installed. I'm going to use this time warp so you don't have to sit here and watch and drag through the video. I'm going to use all the same methods on every single cylinder. So I've showed you how to do the first one. And if you have any questions, any comments, put them down in the comment section below. I'll do my best to answer them, straighten anything out that I may have gotten you confused on. Okay, now we have the pistons installed, everything torqued. Next thing we're going to move to is going to be the main girdle and the final main bolts. So it's got an arrow showing front. Make sure that's forward. The bolts. Put a little oil. A little oil on the tip of it, just to lubricate. I don't usually use ultra torque on things like this because they are not, these are torque to yield bolts. They're just not designed like the ARP stuff is, and I don't want to overdo it, end up breaking one in the block, or worse. So we're just putting oil on it. Now I am going to put some ultra torque under the head just to get a better torque value on it. Just a little dab. It'll pretty much self-smear. How'd you guys like the time lapse? It's the first time I've done it. Tell me down in the comments if you'd much rather watch the whole thing in real time. Had a few hiccups on the way while torquing or while installing the pistons. I'm going to edit those out though. Nothing major, nothing going to cause big problems. Sometimes happens when you use a new tool. You have to come up with a new process to use that tool. Now, I'm going to run these down with impact, but I'm not going to impact them. Now, our torque specification for this is 15 foot-pounds. Plus 180 degrees. Let's see. Not sure if this one will go that low. I may have to get to 3/8. We're going to start off and we're going to torque all the bolts to 15. Using our pattern here. Remember in the last video I wrote the pattern down on here. There's not very much. All right. Now we're going to use our torque angle. We're going to set it to 180. All right, here we go. Set it. Anybody interested, that comes out to about 82, 83 foot-pounds. What it shows on here. 80 to 84. I'm sure it's going to vary. Let's see what we just did for. All right, we got those torqued. Next, we're going to move to the oil pump. Installing the oil pump at this stage is pretty easy, especially if you have the engine out, oil pan off. I've installed them both ways, with the oil pan on and with the oil pan off in the truck. This is by far the easiest and easiest to set up so it will feed oil when you crank the engine. First thing I do, I like to get some assembly lube or assembly grease and go ahead and put some grease on here, just because that rides on there and I don't want anything, I don't want it to gall or anything else. Just make sure it's got the initial lubrication it needs. All you really have to do, you just got 3 bolts and that's it at this stage to put in it. Just take it, and see the engine is upside down, so go ahead and turn it upside down. What you want to do is move your rotor where it will match up the position of these slots there in the crankshaft. I still got the bolt on it. This is by far a little bit challenging sometimes to get it to line up where it's supposed to go. Let's see. You'll have it just right, and then you'll try to get it past that little dowel. Towel or something else will mess it up and knock it out. See what, I'm gonna put some grease on here to help keep it where it's supposed to be, because it's just dry right now. Put it in the front and the back. Just smearing it in here, just to hold this thing still while I try to put it on. Get it rotated to match. Because it's either going to match up or it won't. If it won't, then you'll have to take it off and rotate it again. Tell you what we can do. There we go. Now it is on there. See, once it goes on there, it will go flush against the block. The back will go flush. Now it'll have a little gap here because it's got a backing plate. So all we really need to do now is just put the bolts in it. The 3 bolts we have that go in it right now. I do want to remind you we have the brown spring in this pump. It will be high volume but standard pressure. And the last one there. These bolts, in fact several of the bolts on this engine, front cover and all, a lot of them torque at 89 inch-pounds. So that's where we're going to set our torque wrench at, which I've already got it set. 89 inch-pounds. And we'll just tighten her down. I start on the inner bolt and work my way out. 89, and it's not a lot either. That's surprising enough, it's just not a lot. But you do have other bolts when you put the timing cover on that go through here as well. This one, 89. Right. And to go along with this is the pickup tube. Now before we put the pickup tube on, we're going to pour a little bit of our oil in the pump. This will get us started on priming the engine. Give us a little bit of help with that doesn't run out pickup tube. And we're going to take our pickup tube. You see it's got an O-ring on it. This new one comes with an O-ring. If you reuse your old one, you're going to have to get that O-ring. These pumps, when you buy them, come with a new O-ring. So make sure you install that O-ring on here. I said I've done all this in the truck and I've done all this out of the truck. This is by far the easiest way to properly build this engine. Otherwise you're gonna have to, curl, bend, stretch to get to some of these bolts to take out and to install. That'd take, I believe it was either a 3.5 or 5.4. I literally had to take a 8mm ratchet wrench and bend it almost into a 90 degree to be able to get to these pickup bolts because the oil pan was still on. At the time I was trying not to drop the front axle to get the oil pan off. However, the next one I decided I'm going to go ahead and drop the oil pan and just drop the axle to get the oil pan out as a pre-inspection item to see if the pan is full of plastic or whatever, metal, before I tell the customer, yeah, you may have major problems, or no, you probably don't have major problems. Of course, if you pull the pan off and it's full of plastic, or it's got 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch layer of gunk in the bottom, probably a good idea to go ahead and tell them they need a full rebuild. It not only goes in the pan, that pump will pick it up and it will make smaller pieces out of it and send it through the engine. Okay, this is Daniel with Boss C 351's Productions. Thank you for tuning in for this second video in the series. Up next, we're going to have phase 3. Phase 3 should include the heads and the timing components. That's going to be a pretty lengthy video because you can't skip through any part of that. Every bit of it you guys need to see. So, coming up, probably within the next 24 hours, will be part 3 of the video. Phase 3 on how to build your 3.5 EcoBoost for the 2011 through 2012 Ford F-150 trucks. Again, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to my channel. Click on that bell. Thank you.